Hello folks, hope you all are fine and I'm as usual fine too. So we are going to continue with the next topic of our first chapter, which is the living world. So let's just take a recap. And in last lecture we've studied about the classification system, in which we learned about how to classify things, what we call as a classification, what is the importance of classification, right? I gave you an example of a library, remember? So the classification is very much needed. This is what we have taught in last lecture basically. So now we are going to classify all the living things. And to classify that, there are scientific terms which you should know. So for that, we are going to study today. The lecture is about taxonomic categories. So let me write it first. Taxonomic categories. Now in last lecture we've learned what is taxa, right? If you remember, and if you don't, you should, and still if you don't, you can rewatch that video and remember that again. Okay, so what happens in last lecture, we know what is taxa or what is taxon. Okay, we've studied about both of that, and what is taxa and what is taxon. So both of them are basically, if I say in a very normal, it is a group, okay, of particular living which has similar kind of a characteristic. Similar characteristic. Okay, so there are going to be like some livings which are going to have a similar kind of a characteristic, and on the base of that characteristic you have grouped them, and that particular group is what we call as a taxon, remember? Now what is taxonomic categories, you would ask? So taxonomic categories are hierarchy of steps. See, the grouping of all livings, imagine all livings in the world, is not a one-step process. Yeah, right. I mean, you cannot just be that Thanos and just like in one click you can classify all that thing. No, that is not a possibility here. We are humans. So we have to classify it in a very systematic manner. And in that is not a one-step process. It is going to need more than one like step, right? And that, my friend, are called as hierarchy of step. What is it called? Hierarchy of steps. Okay, in which what you are going to do, okay, so in which each of the steps, okay, so this process is going to involve hierarchy of steps. Now you may say, what is hierarchy? So it is one where one follows another. You see, you have this friend, okay, and you are the best friend of that friend. So if he goes to somewhere to canteen, let's just say in school, he goes to canteen, you are gonna follow them. Yes, you are going to follow him, and you have another best friend. So now if you are going to go after him, that best friend is going to follow you, right? He has another friend, that friend is going to follow. So all the four people are going to canteen because one follows to another. So that is what we call it as a hierarchy of steps, like step by step. Okay, one is going to follow the another. So that is kind of a numbering, you can say, one by one. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, each are going to follow one another. Okay, and each step here, where one step represents the first one and then the another follows it. So each step represents rank or category. Okay, now you may say, what is rank? So rank is the same thing. See, I say hierarchy of step. So you have to give ranks. So this is a first person. So here comes the very first rank. Now because this person follows the first person, he becomes the second one. Because he follows the second, he becomes the third, and here he becomes the fourth. So you actually give a rank to them, na? All of them. And all of them can be classified as a category. Okay, one single category. This is one category. This is one category. Okay, and how you are going to like divide the steps or category? Can you say that? Imagine. Okay, I want you to imagine that if you have studied the last lecture properly, you should know that on what basis we are going to divide these categories. Okay, so right, you have to remember that on the base of similar characteristic we are going, and these categories are called taxons. Remember what were taxon? They were the group of different beings who are like similar in some kind of characteristic, who have similar kind of characteristics, which we call as a taxon. Same thing is called as category. What is category? The taxons who have same kind of characteristic living beings are called as category. Category is also ranked. What are ranked? Each category is ranked. Okay. This taxon is also called as group. Why it is called as group? Remember, all the living things are divided into certain group on the basis of a similar characteristic, which we call as a taxon. Each taxon is called as a characteristic, and each characteristic is called as. So this is what you can say is a taxonomic hierarchy. Why it is taxonomic hierarchy? Because taxons are divided in a particular rank. Okay. So this thing is called as taxonomic hierarchy. Okay? Okay. So now let's just take an example, so it would be much better for you to understand that what it could be. Okay. So let's take the example of an insect. What are insect? Okay. Any bee or fly, you can take any example. So how we have called them insect, like you have known there is a birds, insects, mammals. How you can classify that insect? Now remember the taxon and how we have categorized the taxonomical categories on the basis of semiotics. So yes, this is one taxon or category or group, you can say anything of that, which is divided on the basis of similar characteristic. Which similar characteristic? For example, all of them have 6 legs. So this is one characteristic which we have observed, and by observing this characteristic that these are the similar in this living beings, we have put all of them together in one group which is called as insect, right? So this is how you are going to classify organisms on the basis of different similar characteristics. Okay, and that system of classifying is not a one-step process, it is a step-by-step. Okay, each have this rank or category, and that, my friend, is called as taxonomic category. Okay, now how you are going to divide that? You and I cannot divide these things, right? Because we are not the one who have this authority to divide these things. So who are going to divide that? All the people who does have knowledge about this, because we do not have that amount of knowledge. Okay, so to classify this thing, you should have the knowledge. Okay, knowledge of characters. Okay, of an individual, or you can say group. Okay, so whoever is going to take part in this classification system, he or she should have the knowledge of characteristic of a particular individual or group whom they are going to classify. For example, if they are going to classify this one kind of being, which further we are going to call it as an insect, so he should have the knowledge that okay, this can be taken as a characteristic that they all have 6 legs. Okay, so they, for example, we cannot classify it, only scientists can. Why scientists can? Because they do have, right, they do have this knowledge of characteristics. Now why it is needed to classify things? Okay, I mean, what is going to matter if you don't even do that? So the thing is that this classifying is going to help you in identifying. Okay, Identify and to see the differentiation between them, right? That this is insect and this is bird. You can differentiate between them. So this is because you can actually identify them and differentiate on the basis of what? On the basis of similar and non-similar characteristic. Right. So this is something now we have known. Okay, we have studied about this in last lecture also and this lecture also. In last lecture it was more of a like a layman language. Here it is more of a scientific language. But the you can say the concept is almost same, that you have to classify all the living things, and that is exactly what we are going to study in our next lecture. That how we have classified different kind of groups. There is a common hierarchy. Okay, after this we get a common hierarchy, okay, common categories, and that categories are the very important point of this chapter, which we are going to study in our next lecture. So till then, stay tuned, and I hope you got the lecture. Thank you.